Hare Krishna.
Yes, bro, we are live. Thanks.
Inviting me here to speak something on Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm very grateful to all the wonderful devotees who are present here early morning. And my thanks also to Mukunda Prabhu for organizing these sets of programs, Premananda Mataji, and Pratibhav Prabhu for kindly hosting me at this place. So devotees, before we begin speaking something, I'd like to offer Mangala Charan, auspicious invocations. Most of us know these prayers. You can kindly sing along with me. ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरान्ध्रस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले सोऽयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुर्वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादां सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे नमो महावदान्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते सप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। बोलो प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। निताई गौर प्रेमानंद हरि हरि बोल। Thank you very much once again, dear devotees, for kindly being present here today. Today we are discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam. The verse is third canto, chapter 26, verse number 32. I'll share my screen and you can see the verse in front of you. I'll recite the verse, then I'll speak the word for word translation and purport. This is 3.26.32. तामसाच्च विकुर्वाणात् भगवद्गीतचोदितात् शब्दमात्रम् अपूर्तस्मान् नभः श्रोत्रं तु शब्दगम्। Synonyms: tamasat, from egoism in ignorance, cha, and vikurvanat, undergoing transformation, bhagavat virya, by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, choditat, impelled, shabdamatram, the subtle element sound, abhut, was manifested, tasmat, from that, nabha, ether, shrotram, the sense of hearing, to, then, shabdagam, which catches sound. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When egoism in ignorance is agitated by the sex energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the subtle element sound is manifested, and from sound come the ethereal sky and the sense of hearing. Purport. It appears from this verse that all the objects of our sense gratification are the products of egoism in ignorance. It is understood from this verse that by agitation of the element of egoism in ignorance, the first thing produced was sound, which is the subtle form of ether. It is stated also in the Vedanta Sutra that sound is the origin of all objects of material possession, and by that sound one can also dissolve this material existence. Anavritti Shabdat means liberation by sound. The entire material manifestation began from sound, and sound can also end material entanglement if it has a particular potency. The particular sound capable of doing this is the transcendental vibration Hare Krishna. Our entanglement in material affairs has begun from material sound. Now we must purify that sound in spiritual understanding. There is sound in the spiritual world also. If we approach that sound, then our spiritual life begins and the other requirements for spiritual advancement can be supplied. We have to understand very clearly that sound is the beginning of the creation of all material objects for our sense gratification. Similarly, if sound is purified, our spiritual necessities also are produced from sound. Here it is said that from sound the ether became manifested and that the air became manifested from ether. How ethereal sky comes from sound, and how the air comes from sky, and how fire comes from air will be explained later on. Sound is the cause of the sky, and sky is the cause of Shrotram, the ear. The ear is the first sense for receiving knowledge. One must give oral reception to any knowledge one wants to receive, either material or spiritual. Therefore, Shrotram is very important. The Vedic knowledge is called Shruti. Knowledge has to be received by hearing. By hearing only can we have access to either material or spiritual environment. In the material world, we manufacture many things for our material comfort simply by hearing. They are already there, but just by hearing, one can transform them. If we want to build a very high skyscraper, this does not mean that we have to create it. The materials for the skyscraper, wood, metal, earth, etc., are already there. But we make our intimate relationship with those already created material elements by hearing how to utilize them. Modern economic advancement for creation is also a product of hearing. And similarly, one can create a favorable field of spiritual activities by hearing them from the right source. Arjuna was a gross materialist in the bodily conception of life and was suffering from the bodily concept very acutely. But simply by hearing, Arjuna became a spiritualized Krishna conscious person. Hearing is very important, and that hearing is produced from the sky. By hearing only can we make proper use of that which already exists. The principle of hearing to properly utilize preconceived materials is applicable to spiritual paraphernalia as well. We must hear from the proper spiritual source. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripam tamaham vande shrim gurum dinasaranam paramananda madhavam Sri Chaitanya Devam. Welcome once again, dear devotees, to this morning Srimad Bhagavatam talk. I will once again take you back to the verse, and the verse is saying Tamasa cha vikurvanat bhagavat priye cholita shabdamatram abhut tasman nabha shrotram tu shabdagam. So, in this particular chapter, what is going on, dear devotees, if we wish to know what is going on in this particular chapter, we need to see the introduction to this particular chapter. And introduction is given by Bhagavan in the very first verse of the chapter, dear devotees. So, in the very first verse, and the title of the chapter is given by the previous acharyas, Mahad Adi Tattvanam Utpatti Nirupanam. So, the main topic is Nirupanam, description of the Utpatti, the creation of the various elements. Some philosophers say 24 elements, some philosophers say 25 elements. Some philosophers count time as a 26th element. So whatever the case, whether 24 or 25 or 26, there are number of elements in Sankhya philosophy, and this Sankhya philosophy occupies a major place in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The previous chapter, Bhakti Yoga, was being described, but now from the 26th chapter onwards, Sankhya is being described by Kapil Muni, and Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, in the first verse he said, Atha te sampravakshami tattvanam lakshanam prithak. Atha te sampravakshami. Now I will tell you. He said, now I will tell you. What will you tell me? So he is saying to Mother Devahuti, Tattvanam Lakshanam. I will give you the characteristics of all the 24, 25, 26. The Tattva. What are Tattva, dear devotees? Tattvas are the fundamental principles of Sankhya Darshan, of Sankhya philosophy. Prithak, I will separately tell you. Yad viditva vimuchyeta. On knowing this, vimuchyeta, the living entity is freed. Who is freed? Purusha. The living entity is also known as Purusha here. Purusha is basically of two categories. Ishwar is also Purusha. Jiva is also known as Purusha in Sankhya Darshan, in Sankhya philosophy. So, yad viditva vimuchyeta. Knowing this, Purusha becomes liberated. But which Purusha is going to be liberated? Because Ishwar is already liberated. Ishwar doesn't need anything separate for liberation. So here Purusha implies Jiva. So Jiva is liberated from Prakritaya Gunai, from the material modes. So this is the very beginning of the chapter. Srila Sridhar Swami introducing it says, Shadvimshe pum prakrityostu vivekaya upavarnite sankhena sarvabhavanam janma lakshana bhedata. Shadvimshe, the 26th chapter, pum prakrityostu vivekaya, to understand the distinction between Purusha and Prakriti, to understand the distinction between Purusha and his energy. To understand that distinction, upavarnyate, it is described Sankhyana, through Sankhya philosophy, Sarva Bhavanam, for all the elements of Sankhya philosophy, Janma Lakshana Bhedataha. How those 24, 25, 26 elements are produced, what are their characteristics, what are their divisions, all of this is described here in the 26th chapter of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, dear devotees, it is very important to understand this is how the 26th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam is describing Sankhya, and the result of describing Sankhya, dear devotees, is that one becomes completely free, completely liberated from the entanglement of material nature. While commenting on this, Srila Sridhar Swami has also given another verse below. Right? So what is the verse below? Dhatra putraya yat proktam kshatre mitra sutena yat matre sankhyam tadadhyatmam pradhanyena tattvavid. The devotees Dhatra putraya yat proktam. Previously, Dhatra, Dhatri refers to Sri Brahma. So previously, Sri Brahma had putraya, for he had spoken this to his son Narad Muni, and yat proktam, and kshatre, and previously unto Vidura Mitrasutena, Maitreya Muni had also spoken. So this Sankhya was spoken twice previously. First by Dhatra, by Sri Brahma to his son Sri Narad, and by Kshatta, unto Vidura, it was spoken by Mitrasutena, by Maitreya Muni. So Maitreya Muni spoke to Vidur, and Sri Brahma spoke to Narad, and Matre Sankhyam Tadadhyam, and unto Mother Devahuti, this same Sankhya philosophy, which is Adhyatma Vidya, it is this Sankhya Darshan, Pradhanyena Tattvavid. Our knower of Sankhya, Sri Kapil Muni, is speaking that same philosophy to his own mother this time, and this is how Srila Sridhar Swami introduces this particular verse. Now, dear devotees, what happens next is very important. Jnanam nishreyasaya, Jnanam nishreyasarthaya, Purushasyaatma darshanam, Yadahur varnete tatte, Hridaya granthi bhedanam. So, Jnanam nishreyasarthaya. This knowledge is for Nishreyasa, is for ultimate liberation. And Purushasya Atma Darshanam. And this is self-realization for the living entity, this Sankhya philosophy. Yad Ahur, it is spoken. Varnate Tatte. And Kapil Muni is saying, I am repeating that to you because Hridaya Granthi Bhedanam. Because it will undo all the knots of material entanglement within the heart. So, this is what Kapil Muni is saying. The devotees immediately, Kapil Muni starts describing the origin of Sankhya philosophy. The origin of Sankhya philosophy is Purusha. Who is Purusha? He says, Anadir Atma Purusho Nirgunaha Prakritehe Paraha. Anadir, beginningless, first and foremost. He is referring to that Mahavishnu, Karanadokashaya Vishnu, who is beginningless. He is Atma, basically. He is also known as the original soul. He's not the soul, he is the super soul. He is the original super soul. And he is also known as Purusha. He is Nirgunaha. He is not having any material qualities. And Prakritehe Para. He is beyond the material modes. And Pratyak Dhama. And he is, the devotees, he is Pratyak Dhama Swayam Jyotir. He is basically, he has his own potency, and his own potency, dear devotees, by his own potency, he is self-luminous, Swayam Jyotir, and Vishwam Yena Samanvitam, and by his own potency, dear devotees, the entire universe becomes illuminated. So he has his self-illumination, Swayam Jyotir, and by his illumination, the entire world is illuminated. So the origin of all Sankhya philosophy, dear devotees, is Purusha, because only by Purusha does material energy become impregnated with the modes of nature. So, Sa Esha, next he says, Sa Esha Prakritim Sukshmam Daivim Gunamayim Vibhu Yadrichayai Vopagatam Abhyapadyata Leelaya. Sa Esha Prakritim Sukshmam. Right? Now, that very Purusha, Esha Prakritim Sukshmam Daivim Gunamayim Vibhu. So the Sa Vibhu, that Almighty Bhagavan, has, what has he done? He has taken this very subtle material nature, Gunamahim, Daivim Prakriti. He's taken this very subtle material nature and Yadrichaya eva upagatam abhyapadyata leelaya. So, he has accepted this material nature, Yadrichaya eva upagatam. This material nature has voluntarily come near him. Why has she come near him, dear devotees? Because it was the time of pralaya, it was the time of destruction. All the living entities were within his body, and all the living entities were feeling agitated within his body because the previous karma from the previous creation was impelling them to act again. And because the previous karma from the previous creation was impelling them to act again, therefore, Maya Devi came near him and voluntarily, desired that he should again associate himself with that Maya Devi so that creation can take place. So, dear devotees, in the next verse, our Kapil Muni says, Gunair Vichitra Srijatim Sarupa Prakritim Praja Vilokya Mumuhe Sadya Sa Iha Jnana Guhaya. Dear devotees, Gunair Vichitraya Trijatim Sa Rupa Prakritim Praja. That Maya was Gunair Vichitra. She was wonderful with her three modes. Srijatim, she was creating, she had the creative potency. Sarupa means, she was with a particular form, Prakritim Praja, and she was manifesting the living entities. Vilokya mumuhe sadhya sa iha jnana guhaya. On seeing this, the living entity, because there are two Purushas, One is the Supreme Lord, one is the living entity. The living entity immediately became infatuated with this Maya, and dear devotees, because he was infatuated with his Maya, therefore the living entity became attracted to this material nature again. And then the devotees in the next verse it is described, Evam parabhidhyanena kartritvam prakriti puman karmasu kriyamaneshu gunair atmani manyate. Evam, in this way, you know, parabhidhyanena kartritvam prakriti puman. Therefore, dear, evam parabhidhyanena kartritvam prakriti puman. In this way, dear devotees, that living entity, hmm, kartritvam prakriti puman, that puman, that living entity considers himself to be the doer of all the activities. So that living entity thought that I am the doer, I have to act. In this way, the living entity started thinking of itself as the doer, and karmasu kriyamaneshu gunair atmani manyate. And then that living entity, the devotees, considers themselves as the doer of karma and considers itself as belonging to the three modes of material nature. So, in this way, the living entity has become infatuated with material nature. And then it says, Tadasya samsritir bandha paratantriyam cha tatkritam bhavatya kartur ishasya sakshino nivritatmanaha. So, Tadasya samsritir bandha. No? Tad asya samsritir bandha. Now, the living entity is actually beyond birth and death. Suddenly, because of accepting Maya, again embraces bondage in the material world, paratantramcha, and becomes fully dependent on that Maya, tatkritam. Bhavati akartur ishasya sakshino nirvritatmana. Although the living entity is akartu, he does not have any karma. Living entity is isha, sakshay. The living entity is actually having similar nature as Bhagavan. The living entity is free. But the living entity, because it embraces this Maya, therefore the living entity again becomes bound in the chain of samsara. And this is referring to the time when creation takes place again. Then Kapil Muni says, Karya Karana Kartritve Karanam Prakritim Vidu Bhoktritve Sukha Dukkhanam Purusham Prakrite Param. Dear devotees, it is said, Karya Karana Kartritve, so all the effects, the cause, the doership, all of this, dear devotees, Prakritim Viduhu, Bhoktritve Sukha Dukkhanam Purusham Prakrite Param. And because of that, dear devotees, the cause of material nature, the effects of material nature, everything was produced. And because of this, dear devotees, Bhoktritve Sukha Dukkhanam, the living entity enjoys or suffers in this particular material world, thinking of itself as the doer. Although it is Prakritehe Param, the living entity is technically beyond the modes of material nature. The devotees, in this way, Sankhya philosophy is introduced by Sri Kapil Muni. And when this is introduced by Kapil Muni, then Mother Devahuti starts asking him that please tell me Prakritehe Purushasyapi Lakshanam Purushottama. O Purushottama, O Supreme Lord, please tell me Lakshanam, the characteristics of Prakriti, of material nature, and of Purusha, of the Supreme Lord. Of Bhagavan, Bruhi, Karanayorasya Sadasatcha Yadatmakam. And tell me all the gross and subtle causes, gross and subtle effects of all of these two. And by this, please explain to me the elements of Sankhya philosophy. And when he begins to explain the elements of Sankhya philosophy, dear devotees, while explaining, he gives a wonderful categorization. I will share with you this categorization. Please try to understand this categorization very nicely so that it will become easy for us to know how Sankhya philosophy works. So, dear devotees, when material nature approaches Bhagavan initially, so this is the original material nature which approaches Bhagavan initially, she is called as Prakriti. The meaning of Prakriti, dear devotees, is that she is the original material nature, and there are all the elements are contained within her. She approaches the Supreme Lord because the Jivas want to enter into the material world again. This is Prakriti. Prakriti can be compared to a lady who is approaching her beloved or her husband, and then Bhagwan glances at her, and after glancing at her, Bhagwan uh, impregnates her with his Chit Shakti, with his spiritual potency, and that same Prakriti now becomes known as Mahat Tattva. What is the meaning of Mahat Tattva, dear devotees? Mahat Tattva is that same Prakriti. She produces this first effect, which is Mahat Tattva. Mahat Tattva contains all the elements of creation, and these elements are in a mixed state, and that is known as Mahat Tattva. Mahat Tattva looks like a golden cloud, dear devotees. So all the unmixed Prakriti, the original material nature, after being impregnated by Bhagavan, it takes the form of Mahat Tattva, and then this can be compared to a lady who is expecting a child. And when the lady is expecting a child, finally she gives birth to the first element, which is ahamkar, first element of Sankhya philosophy. And this first element is ahankar or ego. And this ahankar or ego, dear devotees, is the first product of Mahat Tattva. And she is not only going to deliver one product, she is going to deliver many other products, dear devotees. But the root product is ahamkar, and out of ahamkar, the ahamkar is transformed into three types. It is called as ahamkar in the mode of goodness, ahamkar in the mode of passion, ahamkar in the mode of ignorance. So it is also sattvic ahamkar, rajasic ahamkar, tamasic ahamkar. Sattvic ahamkar is also known as vaikarik ahamkar. Rajasic ahamkar is also known as tejas ahamkar, and tamasic ahamkar. Now, from vaikarik or sattvic ahamkar, some elements of material nature are produced. From Rajasic Ahankar, some other elements of Sankhya material nature are produced. From Tamasic Ahankar, some other elements are produced. What is produced from Sattvic, or what is produced from this particular Vaikarik Ahankar? Dear devotees, the first thing that is produced are the presiding deities. Now, which are the presiding deities? There are 14 presiding deities. The 14 presiding deities are known as Dik, Vayu, Aditya, Varuna, Ashwin, and then there is Agni, Indra, Mitra. There are like this. There are 14, presiding deities that are produced by Ahamkar in the mode of goodness. These presiding deities control the various senses. They control the various karma indriyas. They control the various jnana indriyas. And from this ahankar is also produced antahakaran. What is antahakaran, dear devotees? Is the inner faculty. You cannot call it mind, you cannot call it intelligence, you cannot call it, anything else. It is antahakaran. Antahakaran means the inner organ, you can say. And this antahakaran manifests in many ways. It manifests as mind, it manifests as intelligence, it manifests as chitta, the consciousness. So this antakaran manifests in so many ways, dear devotees. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is described that the antakaran manifests in four different ways, dear devotees. So what are the four different ways in which the antakaran manifests? The four different ways in which antakaran manifests is known as man, buddhi, ahankar, and chitta. What is the meaning of man, buddhi, ahankar, and chitta? Dear devotees, mana means when the mind is doing sankalpa and vikalpa. Mind is deciding on something. That time the same, the same ahankar becomes known as, so same antakaran becomes known as mana. When the mind is deciding on something, whether I should, when the mind is reflecting on something or making some informed choices, it becomes known as buddhi. When the mind is thinking, when the antakaran is thinking in terms of I and mine, it becomes known as ahankar. And when the antahkarana is doing general thought, it becomes known as chitta. This antahakaran, internal organ, is thus classified as four, and all these elements of Sankhya philosophy are produced from the Vaikaric division of the first element of Sankhya, known as Ahankar. The first element comes from the sum total, which is known as Mahat Tattva. Mahat Tattva comes from the original unmixed material nature, dear devotees. So, I am also explaining in the reverse order. Now, from Vaikaric Ahankar, then there is also the second type of transformation of Ahankar, which is known as Tejas Ahankar, also known as Rajas Ahankar. From Tejas Ahankar or Rajas Ahankar, you get Karmendriyas and Gyanendriyas. Karmendriyas are also known as organs of action. And these organs of action are basically speech, hands, legs, the organs for evacuation, and genitals. They are five karmendriyas, dear devotees. And the five karmendriyas, there are five devatas. You can see presiding deities. So for the five karmendriyas, there are five presiding deities who control them. Now, who controls the five karmendriyas, dear devotees? Agni controls the speech. Indra controls the hands. Vishnu controls the feet. Mitra controls the organ of evacuation. And Prajapati controls the organ of reproduction or the genitals. In this way, there are five karmendriyas and their presiding deities have been described previously. Then there are five Gyanendriyas. Five Gyanendriyas are five organs of knowledge. What are the five organs of knowledge? They are skin, eyes, tongue, nose, and ear. These are five. And they are also controlled by five devatas. The devata controlling the ears is dik, direction. The devata controlling the skin is vayu. The devata controlling the eye is aditya, sun. The devata controlling the tongue is varuna. And the devata controlling the nose is ashwin. In this way, there are five devatas who also control the five Gyanendriyas. And then, dear devotees, besides that, there are four more. I told you there are 14 devatas. So then there are four more devatas who control the four internal organs: mind, intelligence, ego, and consciousness. So there are four other devatas who control these four. These four are Chandra, Brahma, Rudra, and Kshetrajya. They are total 14 presiding deities. So Karmendriya and Gyanendriya are produced when that same Ahankar gets transformed in the mode of passion. And when the same element of Sankhya gets transformed into tamas, it produces bhutas, gross elements, and tanmatras. Tanmatras are subtle essences of those gross elements. So, what are bhutas? Bhutas are five. What are the gross expressions, dear devotees? So, the gross expressions are earth, water, fire, air, ether. And the tanmatras are their subtle expressions. What are they? Sound, taste, touch, smell, like that. So from the tamas ahankar, these five tanmatras and these five bhutas are produced. In this way, this entire creation of the material universe is described in Sankhya philosophy, the devotees. So this is what is being described in this particular verse. तामसाच्च विकुर्वाणात् भगवद्वीर्यचोदितात् शब्दमात्रमभून् तस्मात् नभ श्रोत्रं तु शब्दगम्. So see here it is referring to tamasa ahankar. And as once we will go back to tamas ahankar, we will see what is produced from tamas ahankar. Tamas ahankar produces the tanmatras, the subtle expressions of the bhutas, of the gross five elements, uh, earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And dear devotees, so which element here is he referring to? So he says Shabda matram, the tanmatra, the subtle expression is Shabda, sound, and the gross manifestation is Nabha, sky. So sky is the gross manifestation, and Shabda is the subtle, the sound is the subtle element or the subtle manifestation, tanmatra, behind the gross sky. So in this way, dear devotees, he is beginning to explain one by one from this verse number 32. So at this point of time, dear devotees, this is what this particular verse is speaking about. Srila Prabhupada also explains that Vedanta Sutra says that sound is the origin of all objects of material possession. So this is mentioned in Vedanta Sutra. There is a sutra which says uh, Shastra Yonitvat. So all the Bhagavan and the material world is understood through Shastra Yoni, through the via medium of divine sound. And by this sound also one can dissolve material existence. He quotes the final sutra of Vedanta Sutra, Anavritti Shabdad, Anavritti Shabdad. So in this way, dear devotees, sound is the first, element in tamas ahankar, and by this sound also one can get liberated, because when that sound comes from the Vedic literature, then that sound has the capacity to liberate all of us. So I'll pause here, dear devotees, at this point of time. Thank you very much for kindly inviting me. यदत्र स्फुरितं किञ्चित् विद्वांसः पूरयन्ति तत् यदत्र सौष्ठवं किञ्चित् तद्गुरोरेव मे. If there's anything mistaken, dear devotees, please correct any mistakes. And if there's anything nice, it belongs to my Gurujanas, it doesn't belong to me. So thank you once again, Prabhu, for kindly inviting me. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much. So is it okay if devotees ask questions?
Sure.
Yeah, I think we have Shri Radhika Mataji and Gopal Hari Prabhu.
Yeah, sure.
Hare Krishna and Dandavat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Thank you so very much, Prabhu, for coming to Naperville. We're just so excited to see you in person and hear from you. Thank you for this class. Question that comes to my mind is you mentioned that through Sankhya, the knots in the heart can be dissolved. And my understanding is that we need bhakti along with, like pure Sankhya is not enough. But maybe that's just for us, Kali Yuga citizens who are lazy, misguided, unintelligent. And maybe the process of Sankhya is perfect and alone can take one to
उस
separate.
पहले मेरा आपको आवाज नहीं
Oops.
आ रहा था या आपका नहीं आ रहा था पता नहीं but
I'm sorry, Mataji.
So, yeah, so I just want to confirm, is it that the process is complete, but it is not enough for people like us in Kali Yuga? Or is it that Sankhya must always be accompanied by bhakti for the knots to dissolve?
Mataji, the thing is, when Kapil Muni is describing Sankhya philosophy, he is describing to those who are eligible for Sankhya, those whose adhikar, those whose eligibility is only in understanding Sankhya Darshan. In Sankhya and Yoga, both of them go together. So those who are Ashtanga yogis, they often and they try to understand Sankhya Yoga. So those who are Ashtanga yogis, basically they are dedicated to understanding Paramatma and trying to get rid of the material existence. For them, this Sankhya Darshan is spoken. So if our attainment, we want to attain Paramatma realization and want to attain Shantaras in the spiritual world, then Sankhya Darshan is, it may work for some individuals. But when one wants to attain personal association of Bhagavan, sit with Bhagavan, talk with Bhagavan, walk with Bhagavan, then you definitely need bhakti, and we should not speak anything without giving a praman. So the praman for this Mataji is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto, 14th chapter, verse number 20. I will share my screen. 11, 14, 20, and Mataji, I'll read the verse, but you kindly read the translation. Bhagavan is saying to Uddhav, न साधयति माम योगो न सांख्यम धर्म उद्धव न स्वाध्याय तपस्त्यागो यथा भक्तिर ममो urjita. Mataji, please read the translation.
My dear Uddhava, the unalloyed devotional service rendered to me by my devotees brings me under their control. I cannot be thus controlled by those engaged in mystic yoga, Sankhya philosophy, pious work, Vedic study, austerity, or renunciation.
So Mataji, If one wants to become free from material nature, then Sankhya may work. But if one wants to have a personal relationship with Bhagavan, then Sankhya will work. So this verse proves that. So I hope this answers your query.
Yes, it answers. And I just want to say that I hear you online, and I'm always amazed at how like you can pull out verses from thin air. It's like, mystics pull out things, pomegranate from Afghanistan. You can pull out verses that are like just on the point, just answer the question. So thank you so very much.
Bhagavan has merely executed. Thank you. Gopal Hari Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhanvat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Krishna. Sorry, I'm just in my work clothes. I had to go to work today. So nice to see you, Prabhu. Thank you again for blessing ISKCON Naperville, blessing us. You chose a topic that is too exciting for for me. And so I had one or two maybe comments and then a question. And that one was that how your ahankar being the first element of Sankhya, as you mentioned, is something so special, so significant, because I mean, at least for me, because it shows that how everything in this material world is ahankar. It's in the material conception, it's our false sense of self. So, like generally, we think of the ahankar as only my body, but my house, this world. I think I am a resident of this world. Everything is manifest from this false self. And maybe you have something more to say on this, because another thing that I noticed in the Bhagavatam is that there's the cosmic elements, and then those cosmic elements instantiate into individual bodies. So we have the ahankar, the cosmic ahankar, and that cosmic ahankar, manifests individually in each one of us as the individual ahankars. But all of these elements, everything in this world, is a manifestation, or in some ways, it's produced from this false sense of self. It's, the conceptions of it is produced from the false sense of self. Maybe you want to comment just on this before we do something more. Yes.
So there is a very nice verse. There is a very nice.
Prabhu, your voice is somehow cutting out now. Before it was clear, but yeah.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now it's better. Yes.
So there is a famous statement in the Upanishads by Bhagavan, where Bhagavan says, "Eko aham bahu syam prajayaya." Aham ekah, alone I am. So this very ahamkar, which you call the cosmic ego, is there in Bhagavan, that alone I am. But bahusyam, many I will become. So this should be syam, bahusyam, many I will become, prajayaya, and I will spring forth the creation. So this statement from the Upanishads proves that I am alone, but I will become many. In this way, all the elements of Sankhya 24, 25, 26 are merely ego extensions of the original cosmic ego, which is Bhagavan. So that is what is proved in the Upanishads, and is very clearly visible that ahamkar is the original cause, and from that big ahamkar, come these tiny manifestations of ahamkar in the form of the devatas, the karmendriyas, the jnanendriyas, etc. So that is what I would like to say. It is right there in the Upanishads. I hope that satisfies your comment.
Yes. So, but this ahankar you are saying it is spiritual? It is Krishna's ahankar?
Yeah, of course, Krishna has ahankar. Bhagavan has ahankar. This Vishnu, basically, is different from Krishna in the sense that Krishna's activities have nothing to do with the material world. But there are three Paramatmas in the material world. The three Paramatmas are Karanodaka Shai Vishnu, Garbhodaka Shai Vishnu, Shirodaka Shai Vishnu. Karanodaka Shai Vishnu is the Paramatma of the entire material creation. Garbhodakashay Vishnu is the Paramatma of individual universe. Kshirodakashay Vishnu is the Paramatma of individual atoms. In this, actually, Paramatma are three in the material world, and all three Paramatmas are having this ahamkar, aham, that I am the seer, I am the witness, I am the sanctioner. So this ahamkar is there. That in the Gita, Bhagavan says that there are two functions of Paramatma that he gives. The first function is drashta, and what is that? The second one, where upadrashta anumanta.
Hanuman.
That so he is the overseer and he also sanctions. So these are two functions, and other functions are also there, bharta, bhokta. But main two functions are he is the overseer and he is the sanctioner. So you can't be the overseer and sanctioner unless you have that I-ness, that I am the overseer, I am the sanctioner. So that I-ness has to be there in the beginning before you can even perform the functions of the material world. So that is that ahamkar belongs to Bhagavan originally.
That's interesting, because another explanation that I heard is that this is why this is the material energy, because everything is contributing to our false sense of self, ahamkar. So that, I mean, could that be yet another interpretation? I've heard that from quite a few different devotees, that this material is produced from ahankar, which is obviously it's an evolutive prakriti and mahatattva, all these things, but then when it actually manifests here, it's this world is produced from the ahankar.
Ahankar in the Purush, there is ahankar in the Jiva. But the difference between the ahankar of Purush and ahankar of the Jiva is that the ahankar of Purush is not tainted by Maya, but the ahankar of the Jiva is tainted by Maya. And because of this, that makes the entire difference. So actually the Purush is Karta, he is the original doer. And Jeev is not the Karta, Jeev is not the original doer. But when Jeev starts thinking of himself as Karta, as the doer, that is when the Jeev's Ahankar becomes known as false ego. But the Purusha's Ahankar cannot become known as false ego, because Purusha is untainted by Maya and Purusha is actually the doer. In reality, Purusha is the doer, and therefore his ego cannot be called false ego because it is the real ego. He is actually the doer. But when Jiva says Karta hamiti manyate, then Jiva becomes tainted with false ego, because the Jiva's ego is tainted with Maya, but Purusha's ego is untainted by Maya. So both have their egos. So that is what can be said in this regard. Right?
Prabhu, so now my question actually. So, generally people think of, ignorance as something bad, ignorance, passion, rajasic, but here in the creation, we also see that sattva, rajas, and tamas have just creative aspects to it, where ignorance is not something bad, it's just dravya, it is something that is, more solid, and passion is energy, and sattva is illumination. So it has this in terms of qualities. So my question is, we have the three things, Sandhini, Samvit, and Hladini. And then we can connect those, we often can or do connect those with Satchit and Ananda. So can we also connect these three with Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas? Is there some correlation that you can connect this? This is something that I was actually discussing with one another devotee, so I'm asking you for more clarification. So these three things, Satchit, Ananda, or Sandhini, Samvit, and Hladini, can we connect that with Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas?
All right. So the answer to this is given in one simple verse from the Vishnu Puran. So I'll point out that verse very quickly so that we will have a good reference to understanding. See Vishnu in the purport to 6.4.27-28, there is a verse quoted. Hladini Sandhini Samvit Tvai Eka Sarva Samstito Hlad Tap Kari Mishra Tvai No Guna Varjite. So Tvai Eka, O Bhagavan, in you, there is one spiritual potency, but you are the Sarva Samsthiti, you are the shelter of all energies, but that one spiritual potency resides within you. But she has three functions. The three functions are joy-giving function, Hladini, and existence function, Sandhini, knowledge function, Samvit. But these three spiritual potencies, spiritual aspects are present only in you. Tvai. But material is Hlada Tapakari. She does not only generate joy, but she also generates tap, misery. So Hlad Tapakari Mishra. She is the mixed, material potency is mixed. There is no joy in the material world which is unmixed with distress. So she is Mishra, Tvai no. She is not in you, Gunavarjite, because you are devoid of the three modes. So this very verse specifies that categorically Hladini, Sandhini and Samvit are distinct because Hladini produces only joy unmixed with distress. Whereas in the material world, there is mixed joy and distress. Therefore, technically speaking, it is very difficult to draw a correlation between Hladini, Samvit and Sandhini along with the three modes of nature, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. But still attempts have been made by the previous acharyas to do this. And one such attempt was made by Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur in Krishna Samhita. So I will give you a reference from Krishna Samhita, so which will help you develop on this idea. For let me, yeah, see here. When the external potency of the superior energy interacts with Sandhini, it spreads concepts of nationalism. This mentality is only found in this world. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Krishna Samhita has said that Maya Shakti also has Sandhini, Samvit and Hladini aspects. Although the Vishnu Puran seems to reject that idea. But if you want to see that idea, you can see in the Krishna Samhita of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in chapter 2 of Sri Krishna Samhita. You can see all the effects of Sandhini interacting with Maya Shakti, Samvit interacting with Maya Shakti, Hladini interacting with Maya Shakti. So all those you can see in the Krishna Samhita. But that's a very new and recent idea. Traditional idea is that these two are separate. So I told you the traditional idea. I also told you some new ideas in this. So I hope that satisfies your question.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Wow, yes, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. This is very interesting.
Correct. Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. I think I am the one next probably. So, Prabhu, this is very technical for me and difficult to understand, but you made very simple and easy to at least to get some understanding. I was thinking, maybe as a layman, I'm not that familiar, not well versed like all other devotees. My question to you is, for every sense or for every sense in the body or organ in the body, looks like there is a predominant, there is one deity which is taking care of it, right? So uh, as a layman, I'll ask you this question. Somebody is that I was wondering, first of all, I was wondering, what are these devatas doing? What is the responsibilities? Now I understand every looks like any devata is responsible for a particular sense for every living entity in this whole universe. I don't know. You can clarify that. And then somebody's organ is not working properly. Is it a problem with his own body, or is not that particular deity is not taking care of his that organ in this living entity? On the top of it, I can see the astrologically there are planetary influences, and then say suppose I go to an astrologer. They said this particular year you have some nerve issues. Okay, so this might be because Rahu or Ketu or something is influencing, and so this is the problem with your particular organ. Say suppose somebody say that. So how is that influence? influencing my organ, even though there is a deity who is taking care of this?
So true, they are what is known as Abhimani Devata. Abhimani Devata means the devatas who are in charge of particular sense organs. For example, Aditya, the sun, is in charge of the eyes. This was mentioned when I was giving the talk. Now, for a particular individual, their previous karma may be such, or their current life karma may be such, that their eye power may be either completely lost or severely reduced. Due to the effects of previous karma, the respective deities start malfunctioning in their body or limited functioning in their body, so that that particular living entity can receive the results of their previous karma. So accordingly, a person starts seeing things unclear, or sometimes they completely lose their vision. This is because the Abhimani Devata, the presiding deity, is not cooperating with their body, and that is due to the previous result of the previous karma that they have to go through. So this is what can be said in that regard. When Jyotish basically controls the nature of a person from previous lives. So when a person is born on a particular date, on a particular time, in a particular place, they are born in such a way from previous lives influence is such that some planets occupy important places in their chart, and those planets govern the nature, the swabhav of that person. Some persons are very irritable people, because they may have some planet, irritable planet, some planet which makes them irritable in nature. So that because of previous karma, they have this nature, and therefore they are born in such a time, they are born in such a place at such a date that they will have an irritable nature. Some people have pitta prakriti. Pitta prakriti means they have excess bile in their body, and this causes skin diseases, this causes thinning of hair, this causes acidity. This is because previous karma, and those respective devatas of Jyotish of the higher planets are also controlling their nature. So gross bodily senses are also being controlled by the devatas, and the nature of a person astrologically is also being controlled by the devatas. But the main driving force is the previous karma of the living entity from beginningless time. So that is what can be said in brief in this regard. I hope that answers your query to some degree of satisfaction.
Yes, Prabhu. Looks like we are thinking that we are independent. Where is that independence? We are bound by everybody. Is now banging. Huh? That's what I understand. Thank you, Prabhu.
So this is what Bhagavan also said, Prakriti kriyamanani, gunair karmani. So this is what Bhagavan also said. Ahankara vimudhatma kartahamiti manyate. That living entity is fully controlled by three modes of nature, and three modes of nature are fully controlled by the previous karma, and that previous karma is beginningless. The living entity is thinking, I am the doer, but actually living entity is not the doer. Living entity is simply enjoying or suffering results of previous karma and thinking himself or herself to be independent. That is what it is. Right?
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Do you have time for one more question? So Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu. Great to see you here. Apart from the other sessions that I somehow try and attend, and something goes in the brain. I don't know if it goes or it does not go. The question in this context was the influence of devatas is, it came up. Normally, within our context, what we do is, and I may be misquoting or presenting my misunderstanding, but we kind of demean the devatas in that sense. That no, we just all the time devatas are insignificant, and it's just Krishna, Krishna. Of course, he is the supreme personality of Godhead, and he is the source of everything. But then here, if devatas control so much, And I think I've heard some answers on this from your sessions, but do you want to touch upon this topic? It's a little
So
big topic.
the mature understanding of devatas, if we want to see what is the mature understanding of devatas, is what Bharat Maharaj had in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I will share I will share a paragraph from Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhu, you kindly read what the mood of Bharat Maharaj was. This is 5.7.6 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhu, can you kindly read the translation by Srila Prabhupada?
Yes, Prabhu. After performing the preliminaries of various sacrifices, Maharaj Bharat offered the results in the name of religion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vasudeva. In other words, he performed all the yajnas for the satisfaction of Lord Vasudeva Krishna. Maharaj Bharat thought that since the demigods were different parts of Vasudeva's body, he controls those who are explained in the Vedic mantras. By thinking in this way, Maharaj Bharat was freed from all material contaminations such as attachment, lust, and greed. When the priests were about to offer the sacrificial ingredients into the fire, Maharaj Bharat expertly understood how the offering made to different demigods was simply an offering to the different limbs of the Lord. For instance, Indra is the arm of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Surya is his eye. Thus, Maharaj Bharat considered that the oblations offered to different demigods were actually offered unto the different limbs of Lord Vasudeva.
All right. So, Hare Krishna. Can you hear me, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
Hare. Ah. So here it is explained very clearly how to see the various devatas. They are the limbs of Bhagavan. And can you have Bhagavan without his limbs? Please tell me. Is it
No,
possible to
that is
have?
not possible.
Not possible. One of the 64 limbs of bhakti described in Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu is Anya Deva Anavagya. I will point out this limb of bhakti, Anya Deva Anavagya. Sharing my screen. This is Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. So can you see here, Prabhu, the one of the limb of bhakti is Anya Deva Anavagyacha. Can you see this, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhu. I see it.
All right. So uh, Sri Jiva Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami defines this as the 17th limb of bhakti amongst the 64 limbs. The 17th limb is Anya Deva Anavagya, and he gives a statement from the Puranas. Harir eva sadaradhyah sarva deveshwareshwarah itare brahma rudradhya navagyeya kadachana. Harir eva sadaradhyah. Hari is to be always worshipped. Always worshipped. Why? Because Sarva Deveshwareshwara, he is the Lord of the Lord of all Devas. But Itare Brahma Rudratya, but others such as Brahma, Rudra, etc., na avagyayaha should never be disrespected at any time. Kadachana. So this is the 17th limb of bhakti among 64 limbs of bhakti. Simply by respecting the devatas, we are performing bhakti of Sri Krishna. And there are many verses given by our previous acharyas where they are glorifying Bhagavan Shiva, Sri Ganesh, Katyayani Devi. Many verses are there. So when we study in detail, we will come to know that although we are exclusively sheltered in Sri Krishna, but we have deep and immense respect for the devatas who are the limbs of Sri Krishna and who are helping Sri Krishna in various departments in this world. So I hope, Prabhu, that was a satisfactory answer to your query.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. You were mentioning about how the jiva is eternally conditioned by our karma. In that way, we're fully controlled by the three modes of material nature. I had a doubt about this in the sense that this statement appears to be deterministic, and at least in my understanding, the general view of our Siddhanta is that Jiva has the capacity for free will to choose between the spiritual or material energy.
That's the question?
Yeah, that's the question. I was wondering how to resolve this specific doubt about your statement appearing to be very deterministic.
So, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, Bhagavan has said, I will specify this. Bhagavan himself is speaking to Uddhav, where he says, Anadi avidya yuktasya purushasya atma vedanam svato na sambhavad anyas tattvagyo jnanado bhavat. Anadi, you can see here, Prabhu, what is the meaning of Anadi and Avidya? You can see here, Anadi means without beginning, and Avidya is ignorance. And Yuktasya, somebody who has that beginningless ignorance, and who is that? Purusha, that is Jivatma. So it is very clearly specified by Srimad Bhagavatam and many previous acharyas, where if you search for Anadi and Avidya, you will get many such references. This is 5.25.8. Anadi means from beginningless time, kala, karma, vasana. So the fruitive activities and the avidya, ignorance, is beginningless actually. This is already mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam in so many places, that there is no beginning point of time for the conditioning of the living entity. There is no certain point of beginning for the conditioning of the living entity. And many statements of Srimad Bhagavatam are there to support this point of view. So accordingly, I have spoken even in this particular chapter in regards to Sankhya. So the jiva is eternally conditioned, beginninglessly conditioned in the material world. So once again, Prabhu, so it is supported from Shastra. So what would be the possible objection to this? Can you please tell me?
No, Prabhu, that wasn't the specific doubt that I had. At least I agree with the point that the jiva is eternally conditioned. But then the specific point on how the jiva is always controlled by the three modes of material nature. Because it appears to me that if such is the case, then like how is it that one takes up to the process of bhakti? I guess in one sense it depends on external agent, but also how does one have agency in their spiritual life? That this appears to me that then, because the jiva is eternally conditioned, in a sense helpless, then the jiva is liberated, or it remains within the material world based upon these external factors rather than internal agency.
Okay. It is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam also that your specific point is mentioned here. Bhavapavargo brahmato yada bhave janasya taryachyuta sat samagamaha. In translation, I will read. When the material life of a wandering soul has ceased, O Achyuta, he may attain the association of your devotees. So, a lot of discussion has been done by the previous acharyas that how is it that a living entity suddenly becomes inclined to bhakti after so much beginningless karma, beginningless bondage with no end to it, and being severely controlled. So at a certain point of time, a particular devotee of Bhagavan decides to causelessly give them some mercy. And because of the causeless mercy given by the devotee of Bhagavan, that is how the ceasing of material life begins for a particular living entity. And this is the explanation which is accepted by all the Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas, that it is only by causeless mercy of Bhagavan or the causeless mercy of a devotee that the eternal wandering of the living entity starts coming to an end. And this is also specified in the Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jiva, 19.159, that Guru Krishna Prasade, the main factor is there should be some causeless mercy of either of a devotee or of Krishna. Then the living entity gets the bija, the original seed of bhakti. By its own effort, it is not possible for the living entity to get such a seed or such a beginning in bhakti. So it comes from an external agent. That Shastra is very clear about that. So I hope that answers the query to some degree of satisfaction.
Okay, I do have more questions on this topic, but I also want to be respectful of your time. So I'm wondering how much longer you can engage
You
in
can
this
ask one
discussion.
more, Prabhu. No problem. Ask one more.
One more question. Okay, so you've covered that the jiva is eternally conditioned, and that only through the mercy of Guru and Krishna that one actually develops their bhakti lata bij. In practical experience, though, I can see that when we go out and try to, for example, like a book distributor going out to meet people to give them the causeless mercy of Krishna and Srila Prabhupada in the form of transcendental literature, that there are still some people who it appears that they have some agency in accepting or rejecting that mercy, and that despite the desire of the book distributor, not everybody is able to receive the same equal amount of mercy. So it appears to me that there's also agency on the part of the jiva for to the degree that they accept the mercy and that they actually take up the process of bhakti.
Wonderful. So we covered in our discussion, we covered the external agency part. See, without an external agency, the jiva will never be able to receive it. That is for sure. And in the previous answer, I have spoken that. But even if an external agency is there, Bhagavan sends an external agency, but the jiva is not willing to receive it, then also it will not be possible for the jiva to begin on the path. And this is also specified in Shastra, where in the Bhakti Sandarbha, in the beginning of the Bhakti Sandarbha, Sri Jiva Goswami takes up the topic of how one, finally becomes eligible for receiving bhakti. So giving bhakti, Bhagavan is giving opportunities many times, but who becomes eligible to receive bhakti? So that is also specified by Sri Jiva Goswami in the beginning of Bhakti Sandarbha. I will share the screen and I will show the verse from Sri quotes Brahma Vaivarta Puran, where he says, Yavat papaistu malinam hridayam. As long as the heart is chock full of negative karma from many previous lifetimes, Tavadeva hi, till that time, na shastre satya buddhi syad. It is not possible that one will easily become inclined to hearing books or reading shastra or associating with the devotees. Sadbuddhi sadgurau tatha. And they will not develop faith in the devotees. But one life passes, they did not accept the book. Another life passes, they did not accept the book, they did not accept the message. But then Sri Jiva Goswami says, Aneka Janma Janita. Many lives pass, they are given repeated opportunities, they may not accept, but they develop some punya. Punya means they develop some favorable devotional piety. And phalam mahat, the result of developing devotional piety over many lives, Satsanga Shastra Shravana, they finally agree to associate with the devotees, and Shastra Shravana, they finally agree to read the books. Eva, then only Prema Dijayate, then only Bhakti and Prema, all of that happen. So on the part of the Jiva also, they have to spend a few lifetimes before they can, their devotional piety snowballs into a big avalanche that can project them into direct association with the devotees. So that is also there. So I hope that satisfies your query.
Okay, yeah, Prabhu, that does satisfy my query. But the underlying theme of my doubt is, at least I believe that the jiva has like agency and responsibility. But from the topics we've covered, it appears that the responsibility, the actual responsibility of the jiva for becoming liberated, for becoming a pure devotee, for accepting pure devotional service is very limited, extremely limited. And it appears that this process occurs just as a natural external, like a natural like occurrence of events separate from like the agency or responsibility of the jiva itself.
You can very clearly say that jivas who are just beginning on the path, who have intense material conditioning, have very limited capacity to accept this process. But acharyas have given an example. They said that let's say there is a person who doesn't like to eat food because they are sick, they are diseased. Now, Prabhu, please tell me, can a sick or diseased person easily relish food?
No, he can't.
Can't. But if there is an expert chef who can make very tasty food, can a sick or diseased person also not become interested in the food?
He can become interested in it, but his capacity to relish it is still limited.
But that initial spark can be produced by a very expert devotee who is very good at giving logic, arguments, and convincing factors from Shastra. And that initial conviction can be the launch pad, which can launch the devotee into initial stages of bhakti. So it is also very much dependent on how expert the devotee is whom the living entity comes in contact with.
I see. Okay. And then bringing this to like my own like personal practical life, like how much agency or responsibility do I have then for accelerating my process of purification?
Your responsibility begins after Diksha, because Adav Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangha Tata Bhajan Kriya. So initially you have Shraddha, you have some faith in Shastra, you get some association of devotees, then you get to know the process and you get Diksha. After Diksha, Bhajan Kriya is purely, mainly your initiative. So that is where your role sets in.
Okay, so then after the process of Diksha, then that's when the jiva it becomes responsible for, in a large part, for their spiritual life.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. That really cleared up my doubts very nicely. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, bro. Once again, thank you so much for your time. This was, I think, longest class we ever had in Naperville. So thank you so much for taking time and answering all the questions, and wonderfully also explaining the Sankhya philosophy. Pratibha, would you like to add anything before we end?
No, yeah, you are the moderator. So I think, like you said, it's gone long and devotees have other things to do for the day. So we can conclude here.
Once again, thank you so much, bro. We'll look forward to hear you in the evening.